Now that's significant. The Market Research Podcast.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this latest episode of Now That's Significant, a market research podcast. This is your host, Horst Feldhaeuser, Group Service Director at Infotools. Today, we're joined by John O'Toole, a seasoned director, CEO, sales and marketing professional, entrepreneur, and business growth consultant. John is the lead partner, marketing innovation at Nudge Partners, a managing consultant at Brandbiz Limited, and also the chief judge for the REAwards, New Zealand's biannual celebration of outstanding market research and insights work. Thanks for joining us on the show, John.
Thanks for inviting me.
So, John, what's the most significant thing that you will tell us today?
The most significant thing, I think, that research and insights will always be important, but it's actually getting more and more critical, especially for large organizations, just to allow them to compete today. So info and insights is power, but info and insights that are acted on quickly, that's what really empowers really large organizations. So an ever improving research and insights capability is a very valuable value proposition, I think, for large organizations today. I probably don't need to say that to this audience, though. So the second most important thing is that you really need long-term strategic partnerships to achieve this capability. You can't do it internally or all internally, I believe. It's just moving too fast today. So long-term strategic partnerships, I think, are critical for systematic research and insights capability development and building. The external partners bring the external view, of course. They bring the right expertise to the table and a broader expertise and insights and research to the table. They often bring you across industry experience and view, and a focus just on best practice research and insights. And that also probably help keep you up with technology. So yeah, this long-term partnership, this is a very clear trend in the last Research Effectiveness Awards over the last 2 decades, I'd say, but particularly in this last awards session.
Yeah,
they're just more.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
and as you just mentioned, the REAwards, right? So a few weeks ago, we celebrated 23 years of the New Zealand Market Research Effectiveness Awards. And you personally have been involved as a judge and chief judge for at least 15, if not more years. What makes this event so special for you?
Yeah, I love the Market Research Effectiveness Awards because they basically go to the heart of what I think is great strategy and execution. And they look across all the profit and not-for-profit sectors in New Zealand. So, yeah, it's very important, very special. But one thing I think to recognise as a big company that you've got a problem or a big problem or opportunity, but to do the design and implementation program and get that to work, you invariably need to use a lot of other, or the right research and insight tools and techniques. And bigger the company, the bigger the risk involved, the more important it is to use the right tools and techniques. Or kind of put another way, the larger the scale and the more at risk, then the more important it is to get the right tools and techniques into play. So these large research and companies, they need the research and insights capabilities that allow them to get through that discover, define, design, deploy, development cycle faster. In other words, to get more responsive and agile. The research is just really basically, to me, a set of tools and techniques that helps teams to do just that: reduce risks, understand problems better, define them better, optimize experience and outcomes better, make better decisions faster with lower risk. It's important for any organization of people trying to achieve something together. And the bigger the organization, obviously, the more critical this becomes. So in that kind of vein, a country is just like the biggest organization, isn't it? And the government is often the biggest organization in it. So having a strong research and insight sector in New Zealand is very important to all of us. I would like to imagine that the New Zealand government, if it's on its game, is really trying to ensure that we maintain a strong research and insights sector in this country for all of us. So for me, this is kind of personal. It's a personal thing. About in 1997, so many years ago now, had the honour of being head judge of the marketing awards for New Zealand, and that was the year we introduced the Market of the Year awards. So that kind of predates, I think, the REAwards in this country. But the criteria that we developed at the time was all about entrants showing us that they understood consumers at a rational and an emotional level, and showed us how they were translating that knowledge and insight into better products, services, experiences, campaigns, and ultimately brand results in the market. So it focused on looking at the entrant's history of repeated insights into action cycles, if you like. So that's kind of why I think those research awards and effectiveness awards are so cool. It actually lets you look at that and which organizations are really onto it and doing this well and not doing it well. It's the awards are super interesting from a big picture strategic perspective. We can also see like which sectors are using research better and which sectors are embracing the new tools and techniques like AI and things are important nowadays, and which companies really understand the consumers at, like I say, both a functional and an emotional level, and adapting. It's all pretty telling. And I think back to that partnership thing and strategic research and insights capabilities, which organizations have structured themselves today to stay on top of and their competition in terms of, this intelligent capability. So yeah, that's why I think the awards are important. I think it's also important that we, as an industry, recognize and highlight and celebrate great research and research that's made a difference in the market and in society. Basically, that's what good research does. It shortcuts consumers' wants, needs, attitudes, perceptions into organizational behaviors, if you like, or actions that show up in people's lives and in marketplaces quicker. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And it kind of leads us right to the next point as well that I was wanting to bring up. What we see time and time again is that New Zealand projects and entries not only excel locally, but also are recognized globally, with the 2020 REAwards winners going to win the Global SMI Effectiveness Awards in 2022, and also another New Zealand project winning the same competition in 2018. What's your take on why the New Zealand insights industry is so strong, both locally and globally?
Yeah, I have some quite strong views on this, but New Zealand, I think, as a small and highly innovative country, and we always have been. So, of course, being small is an advantage when it comes to being innovative. Bigger companies, bigger countries find it harder to innovate typically. So, bigger means more inertia, means slower to act. But New Zealand, historically, we've been overrepresented in other industries. Look at the advertising awards for many decades. We were well overrepresented in the advertising awards globally. But in team sports, rugby, yachting, softball, there's lots of things where we get a little ecosystem in this country and we move faster and we can innovate better. So yeah, we overrepresented a lot of benchmarks on a per capita basis. Why is New Zealand industry so strong? And I think that is a function of our small size, and that shakes out into, the small market shakes out into a stable industry structure of number one and number two, and some also rans really quickly. So I think this creates not only a more profitable industry structure, but it actually allows you to move faster as well. As a business mentor, I always ask clients, would you rather have an excellent company in a poor industry structure or an average company in a good industry structure? And the answer, of course, is the latter, because that stable environments allows you to make more money quicker, basically. As a country, we also collaborate and partner in New Zealand better than most other countries. It's much harder to collaborate, for instance, in Australia. So we can get to long-term partnerships quicker and true win-win partnerships here. And I've seen that. Anyone who's worked overseas a lot would have seen that. And in this year's awards, it's interesting because we were spoilt for choice, I think, for the number of entries that could have qualified for the Donata Sustained Impact and Effective Partnership Award, which is one of the top 2 awards. But, you know, I think that is a growing trend. We had about 7 entries this year that would have qualified for that quite prestigious award, all with, you know, 10, 20-year partnerships, which is just astounding, I thought. Yeah, this one's, I think, with the road transport, I think was a real class entry on that. It's 20 years old and has resulted in saving a lot of people's lives and road safety. So yeah, we collaborate better, we experiment and adopt new technologies faster. I think Infotools and is a great example in the research sector of that. I think NeedScope is probably an example of adapting, you know, really good research techniques, innovating that area. And I think we have a can-do attitude, which is real, and it helps us move faster. We tend to do the number 8 wire thing and just try things and get on it and see if it works or not. Other things like we do have a strong IT sector here relative to our size as a country, and that helps. And I think from a research only perspective, I've always believed that maintained that we had a competitive advantage, I believe, in qualitative research for a couple of decades, or for quite a few decades, simply because we had one player that was very, very good in Halen research, and they trained a lot of people, and that spread throughout the industry really quickly. So we got a very high standard of qualitative research in this country, and always have had as a result of that. And if you go overseas, and a lot of American companies, for instance, they still struggle with qualitative. They're stuck with quantitative and behavioral, but not really getting that understanding the emotional why. So yeah, that's another reason why I think we're very strong in the research sector in New Zealand. There are lots of other comparative advantages, but those are the ones that stick out from a research perspective. You know, small size, our culture, creativity, IT sector, and our strong qual sector.
And you're absolutely right. And I mean, also, you know, it's a great market to test stuff, right? Whether that's on the research side or whether it's on the product side. You know, there's not too much lost if you don't get it right in New Zealand, but there's so much to be learned, right? So we can always be on the leading edge. And you mentioned qualitative research, and I think with all of the developments in technology and AI, it gets a little bit of a resurgence again, where people recognize qualitative is actually helping a lot and is needed, and now has got those tech tools as well. So coming back,
I think you need to use the whole tool set and to solve these problems. So you need the quant and the qual all the time.
100%. So coming back to the 2023 REAwards, and you mentioned them already with some of the outstanding submissions and winners that we've seen. At the same time, we had somewhat few submissions compared to previous years, and also quite a few projects entered that had, say, very strong design and methodologies, but maybe not so much shown the effectiveness of the research and the outcomes. What do you think the reason is for this? What's your take on that?
Yeah, but best to take this in 2 parts. Now, first, what are the reasons we had few entries? Well, I think that's really just a cyclic thing. I can reflect on other, marketing awards and advertising awards. Some years we had good years, some years not so many entries. So it's not, I don't think that's specific to the research industry and research awards. I think we've also had a kind of COVID impact across all industries, but maybe more so in the research sector. So I think there might be there's definitely a COVID hump. I mean, the last research awards, effectiveness awards, we had just a whole flora of COVID-related entries. So I think there was a hump and a bit of COVID exhaustion maybe in the industry. And I think this year also we changed the timing. So it's a bit harder, I think, for people to enter with the financial year closing in on them for some companies. So yeah, I think that's kind of why we had fewer entries. And maybe some research companies aren't seeing the value in supporting the REAwards as much. And that's something I think we'd need to address, because like I said, it's super important, I think, in terms of keeping the industry, helping industry thrive going forward, as we get the participation and we celebrate these kind of successes and best practice and good results.
And it builds relationships as well. It builds the client relationships. If you go back to your clients and say, let's put a submission together, it just builds that relationship and you understand what's going on their side as well.
Yeah, but even from a partnership point of view, if you think of a really good, and that's what we're seeing, but if you've done really good work together as a partnership, you should definitely find ways to celebrate it. And entering awards is just one way of doing that. And it not only means you think it's good, it actually means other people think it's good work, right? And a good partnership and a good result. So yeah, I think that's really important. Why? So yeah, the other part of your question is, why did we get some entries that had really strong methodologies, but didn't really talk to the results so much? Well, I think that's a bit of a frustration in that over the last, if you like, 20 years of judging the awards, in that you always feel there's some entries that got great results but just didn't tell you, and you could see the methodology was right and they'd done all everything else right, but they didn't talk to the results enough. So I think the judges, they're just really experienced research people, and clients and academic people have seen a lot of research in their lives and careers, but they can only judge what's put in front of them. And we are judging effectiveness. So if the results aren't there, then some of these entries are just letting themselves down. They've done it all the hard yards, they've got it right, and just let themselves down in writing the actual entry, I think. But the funny thing here is report writing is like stock and trade in the research industry, isn't it? So I have struggled excusing entries that don't follow the format, the clear criteria, and write a good entry, and it's just like writing a report. So yeah, I think the other part of it, I think, is a bit like you're talking about before, Horst, is you should write this with the client, because these are always team outcomes, and the results will be seen and understood better probably from the client's perspective than a research agency's perspective. So and it kind of builds a partnership again. So I think involving your clients and doing a whole team entry, and even inside the research agency, not just putting it to a junior, but getting the whole team internally to review it and vet it and say, are we putting our best foot forward? And then, on top of that, if you add the client and to make sure you've met all their expectations and put your combined partnership best foot forward, then I think you're much better likely to get a much better entry and result.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Now, we also celebrated a new Research Association New Zealand RANS Life member and 4 new RANS fellows this year. As an industry, what would you say are the most important aspects that we and our people need to focus on to be relevant in the future, so that we're not replaced by AI and Chat GPT and the likes and all of that kind of stuff?
Yes, those topics come up a lot nowadays. AI is everywhere at the moment. But I was reflecting on what the RANS Life members and fellows, as being presented the awards, what they'd seen in their careers in the industry. And I expect it's a bit like me. It's like you see a lot of change, especially in technology, which moves really fast, but not so much change in humans and human behavior. So I think that's what's kind of a common theme across all industry. The technology keeps moving faster than, and is adopted often by consumers faster than big companies are able to pick it up and run with it and apply it. So and that's just accelerating. It's an accelerating thing, isn't it? The technology just gets faster and faster. The pace of change is faster and faster. But the technology is just another set of tools. Like AI is just another set of tools that help us to do certain things better than we can do without that tool. So like any tool, it's just as good as a craftsman that's using it. A master craftsman will not only know what tool to use when, but also they'll know how to use each tool really well, given and which ones to apply in a given situation. So a bad craftsman, on the other hand, probably blames their tools, and probably because they don't understand them or how to use them properly. So I think becoming a master craftsman today is what we're really talking about if you want to protect any industry, but particularly research, I think, where technology is impacting it in such a powerful way, that we need to train people on this broader tool set and teach them that these are just tools, and teach them how and when to use these tools properly in different situations. And while still maintaining them understanding that we're talking about people and relationships. When we're talking about brands and markets, we're talking about an organization relating to a group of people in the market. So it's about human relationships, and that doesn't change so much. Yeah,
Makes sense.
So I think the second part, I'm really passionate about keeping New Zealand's research sector vital because I think it's important for the future of the country and everyone in it. But to remain relevant, the research industry, I think we really need a strong industry plan that covers the whole industry, and that this industry is growing. Think design thinking. A lot of companies are doing research techniques internally. A lot of capabilities going internally. So you need to look at a much broader definition of the research today, and you need a whole plan for the whole industry that encompasses the whole ecosystem. So and that includes government, that includes all the different sectors, a focus on each different sector and their research and insights needs, but does ladder up to the government, and then ladders to an international perspective, which you're going to need to keep up with technology and the people capability sides of that business plan. So yeah, that's what I think's needed, is just a plan that looks at it as an ecosystem and covers all the bases. Yeah, that's where I'd be going.
Yeah, exciting times. Lots happening, and I mean, the exciting stuff for me is that there's always new stuff for us to learn. But as you're right, I mean, it still comes down to people, right? At the end of the day, we're still bringing people together. On one side, the consumer and the users, and the population. On the other side, people who wants to use that information. And yeah, we just need to use our brains and the technology to help us with that.
Yeah.
Now, yep. It's fair to say that the REAwards evening, and also last year's conference, and I can't remember whether you were there were great celebrations of the industry and a coming together of like-minded people. And in particular last year as well, where we haven't had a social gathering for some time due to COVID. What else can we do to further share our successes and strengthen our industry? Anything we can learn from other related industry, like the marketing or advertising industry?
Yeah, I can look even across all industries. My whole life's been in marketing, but the holy grail of marketing has always been word of mouth marketing. Products and services, experiences, so good that people want to tell their friends and family about them. So they create their own brand evangelists, if you like. But after word of mouth comes PR, just straight PR. We often forget about that. So today, these two earned media techniques or marketing techniques, they are greatly boosted by the internet and particularly social media. So to answer your question, what do we need to do as an industry and research companies? We need to get really good at word of mouth marketing and PR, particularly digital. And if we're targeting global multinationals, we need to get really good, or governments even, we need to get really good at account-based marketing techniques to crack those really large organizations. Funnily enough, entering local and global awards like the REAwards is probably one of the best ways to generate word of mouth and PR. So we do need more research companies taking the time to enter the REAwards and other awards, international awards. And this will help not only them, but I think the industry as a whole.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And it builds those relationships. So this is really interesting, John. And just to quickly recap what we talked about today, we talked about how market research helps organizations to shortcut to consumer wants and needs, understands their challenges and our opportunities, and ultimately make better business decisions faster and with lower risks. And that's what the REAwards really showcase in particular. How being a small but highly innovative country gives New Zealand insights, professional, an advantage and an edge, and often also leads to better long-term relationships, a growing trend that we've seen over the last few decades. How the REAwards judges can only judge what is put in front of them, as you said, with those award entries. So, we are rewarding market research effectiveness, and so we need to show those impacts and show that really clearly. That's really crucial. Becoming a master research craftsperson today, we need to train people on much wider tool set, including the rest tech, AI, but cannot forget our ultimate role of understanding people, brands, and relationships, as we mentioned. We also talked about that New Zealand is one of the best test markets in the world to develop and prototype many things, including market research and insight. So great place to be for us. Good on us. And that entering awards and conference submissions strengthens our client relationships. and can grow the insights businesses and the New Zealand research industry as a whole. So, and yeah, having worked with numerous agencies as well, I totally can see that where you work, with your clients on a submission, and that just, makes it a much stronger relationship and bond, and you much better positioned to understand their business as well and the outcomes. I think that covers it, right, John? Anything else for you to add?
I think that's a pretty good summary. Yeah, it's great. It's great to see you can see things across the years and the awards, and I think the trend's good. I think the industry's in pretty good shape, and yeah, there's lots of opportunities. Yeah,
and it's a fun place to be. And
that's
so,
for sure.
yeah, that's for sure. So big thanks for joining us on today's episode, John. It has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. For those listening, if you'd like what you hear today, please subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and feel free to share with others who might also find it helpful. Thanks for listening to Now That's Significant. See you next time.